This is our COVID Roundup and CDC update for July 5th, 2024. I'm going to very hesitantly say we have a 25% decrease in COVID deaths since last week. There's two reasons why I'm hesitant to say this. The first being that I identified an error in the website that I'll show you later on in the video. And the second is due to this trendline scale up above. 2 weeks ago, we had about a 23% increase in COVID deaths, and last week we had a 14% increase in COVID deaths, which doesn't really seem to be reflected by this trend line. For instance, this is what it looked like last week. It's very possible that they just shrunk the scale of this. So perhaps this would be a scale of several months, and this could be the scale of the past 2 weeks. And then the error I identified is the numbers listed here. They do not match the numbers in the highlighted ranges here. For instance, KP3 is reported at 24.5%. If we hover over the nowcast estimate, that is actually at 36.9%. And the bar also shows an increase since the prior reporting period, not a decrease like this number would suggest. And we see this across the board for KP2, 24%, LB1 at about 15%, and KP1.1 at about 9.2%, where those are being reported at 21.5%, 10%, and 8.9%. So all of those are incorrect compared to what's being reported here. So I think what happened is that the information in this figure plot over here is correct and that these numbers are incorrect. I think these lineage are correct, but I think what's happening is that these values and ranges are being imported from the week of 5/26/2024 to 6/8/2024, which is a month ago. So I think the person accidentally imported the month ago data instead of July, which is the 7th, 7/8, for the different lineages that are currently existing. So I think this is just a technical error. So I extracted some of the important stuff that we've been monitoring. So KP3 increased to about 37%, KP2 increased to about 24%, LB1 decreased to about 15%, and KP1.1 increased to about 9%. And then that XDV1 that we mentioned last week during the last report decreased to about 1.1%. Now, errors do happen, they're not a big deal, and you usually see an increase of these right before weekends or holidays. For instance, in New York, just last week, they were missing a section of the map, and they were also reporting a loss of 30 sewer sheds, which ended up being an accident, a programming mistake before the weekend. So I want to emphasize it's not a big deal that the mistake happened. It's just you have to always look at the data itself to make sure that what is being shown and reported is actually correct, because I absolutely guarantee that some news outlets are just going to rip these numbers straight through it without double checking like I did, and then they're going to be reporting on inaccuracies for the week. Moving on to our wastewater section with wastewater scan. Looking at just California, we see a clear increase in the wastewater still, and this is prior to the 4th of July holiday. So that should end up being some sort of super spreading event where we're going to see a huge increase in the coming weeks. That is my opinion. And we just started getting liftoff from the graph here. And when we look to prior waves, when we start to get liftoff, we're typically about 3 to 6 weeks away from the peak of the wave. So that would be my guesstimate for when we're going to hit the peak of the current wave. And then when we look to wastewater scan for all US reporting facilities, we see a very similar thing happening, where the wastewater still seems to be on an upward trajectory. Additionally, from the scan program, for our Santa Clara County wastewater monitoring, everything's at high levels, where again, San Jose has reached their highest point ever for COVID wastewater levels for the entirety of our pandemic when they're monitoring it. And also Sunnyvale just this week also hit their all-time pandemic high, showing that COVID is still spreading, it's still around, and it's still bad.